Why is a handshake so important? It's your first impression. A handshake not only conveys a sense of professionalism, it is also a fundamental part of interview etiquette. Either not offering your hand or refusing a handshake would suggest to the interviewer that you may be unapproachable, poor with supervisors, co-workers, and the people you support. In short, it is just plain rude. Many, if not most interviewers, will at least read a bit into a handshake and how it is conducted. A good handshake is firm, quick, and is accompanied by good eye contact and an engaging greeting. A poor handshake can give a totally opposite impression. A weak handshake implies weakness or lack of confidence to the interviewer. A handshake that is too firm can convey dominance. There are many common but poor handshakes that should be avoided. The I am dominant handshake starts by placing your palm downwards when offering your hand. By forcing your palm downwards, you place the other person in a submissive position. Although the dominant handshake may be appropriate in some circumstances, in everyday situations it should be avoided. The bone crusher is a grip that hurts people and usually is accompanied by a vigorous pumping action. Hand grips should be no harder than the strength that is used to hold a door handle. Match your grip to the person you're shaking hands with. Elderly and disabled interviewers require a looser grip. The limp fish handshake is universally disliked. This handshake looks exactly like it sounds. A floppy, sloppy grip will not impress an interviewer. The floppy fish signals to the interviewer that you are nervous, uncertain, and uninvolved. If you're unsure whether your handshake is limp, ask to practice with a few friends until you get your grip right. The fingertip handshake conveys weakness, uncertainty, and inaffection. With this handshake, you only shake the other person's fingers. Be sure that the web part of the hands are touching before you begin the handshake. If you are nervous about introductions, you may end up with a cold, clammy, or sweaty hands in a social situation. To avoid a cold, clammy, or sweaty hand, keep a paper towel in your pocket to wipe off sweaty palms to lessen the impact. Avoid cold drinks. If your hands tend to get cold, warm them up with a hand dryer in the restroom. The double-hander handshake involves engaging one hand with the other person's hand, then placing the other hand on top, creating an enclosure. Common at funerals, this handshake is meant as solace for the bereaved. This handshake is overly personal or intimate. Unless you are a politician or a grandmother, it is probably best to reserve the double-handed handshake for a close friend, not an interview. A long handshake should be avoided. Ideally, a handshake lasts 2 to 3 seconds and does not last any longer than the verbal introduction. Any longer, and it seems like you're holding hands. The miss is a handshake that somehow doesn't quite come together. Whatever the problem with a handshake, know that the other person feels just as responsible for the miss, and it's purely accidental. The lack of eye contact handshake should be avoided. Not making eye contact during a handshake signals that you are not forthcoming. If your lack of eye contact is due to social anxiety, practice looking at a spot between the eyes so that at least you give the appearance of meeting the other person's gaze. The too close handshake could result in your deselection before the interview begins. During this handshake, you're either too close or pulling the person towards you. The closeness of this handshake is likely to make people feel very uncomfortable. So what is the anatomy of a good handshake? A good handshake starts by establishing eye contact and looking at the person. A good handshake is accompanied by a smile. Start the handshake by aiming the web between your thumb and forefinger toward the other person's web. Gently press your bottom 3 fingers against the back of the other person's hand. Shake 2 or 3 times and release.